All right, so the first story is called the 850 per hour UFC fight. Okay. It is very, very early on in the process of starting the law firm, and I am making absolutely no money whatsoever. So I'm working the law firm during the day, and then I have a job at night. And the job I have at night and on weekends is the job I had when I was in college, which was helping people with mental incapacity to live in the community. So they have apartments around, and we would go in and give them direct care. Okay. Not the sexiest job. It was a good college job. I really enjoyed it. You know, I did that for a career before I went to law school. Still probably my favorite job ever, because talking with those people, just interacting with them and helping them was just such a joy. You know, when you're in college, it's a joy. When you're an attorney and you go back to that, it's not a joy. So I made, when I left, when I worked there in college, I made $13 an hour. So I had to bridge the gap. There was just no money in our family at that point. I think my wife was getting a stipend of $1,500 a month from the university and had to make ends meet. So I went back and they said, cool, you can come back. And I talked with the CEO. He's like, yeah, sure, come on back. And we'll start you out at $8.50 an hour. I thought, well, I don't really have that many options, so let's do this. So I'd work on nights and on weekends. It was an apartment. It's in Riverton. When I say apartment, it's really a house. There are 4 guys who live in the house. One of the new guys comes in. His name is Mohammed. And Mohammed is fairly high functioning, probably in the IQ in the high 60s, low 70s, you know, somewhere in there, and has a real violence problem. Okay, so we had to deal with that. One night, he gets upset. He decides to leave the house, and it is in the winter. So he leaves. I don't even know if he had a jacket, but he leaves. I locked the door because he had been, you know, he'd been getting to the point where he might get violent before. So I locked the door. It's probably an hour later. He strolls back to the house and starts banging on the door. And I'm trying to talk to him to calm him down a little bit because I got 3 other guys I got to take care of, and it's just me. You know, this is kind of late at night. It's just me with the other guys, and he's not calming down. So he's banging on the door, and I'm saying, look, I'm not going to let you in. Let's talk a little bit through the door. He decides he doesn't like that, so he kicks in the door. And this is not the first time that Mohammed and I have gone the rounds. Okay, so we've danced this dance, but he gets the better of me in this one and bull rushes me. I am on the ground, and he is on top of me like Conor McGregor, okay? And I am, if you remember anything about UFC, kind of the early days, there was Royce Gracie, he weighed like 175 pounds. He was the guy that would beat the dudes who were 300 pounds because he knew how to arm bar and do jujitsu, and no one knew that back then. So he was always on his back, but he would always win. So I am like Royce Gracie, I'm on my back here. But the tough part is I can't fight back, right? I mean, this kid wants to break my face, and he's trying to. And I can't beat this guy up. He has an IQ of like 68, right? I can't do that. So what I come up with is I'm going to hold his head as close to my chest as possible so he can't hit me. So I grab his head, and I'm holding it there. And you know what I really want to do is just start punching him in the side of the head, but I can't. So I start talking to him. You know, come on, let's calm down. We can work through this. You know, and he is just doing everything under the sun to try to break my nose and whatever else. But this goes on for about 5 minutes. Finally, he calms down enough. I'm like, all right, can I let you go? Can we stop this now? He says yes. We get up, and there's this kind of truce because now we're back on our feet. So there's a truce. He decides to go into his room, and he's okay for the rest of the night. I spend another couple hours at the house. Another staff member relieves me. I go home at that point. So it is midnight. I think when I finally get home, and 1 second. And I can't go to sleep, obviously. You know, the adrenaline's still pumping. So I'm just sitting there thinking about how much of a complete and total loser I am. I did well in college. I got into law school. I graduated with honors. I clerked after that. I worked for a big firm, and I'm working an $8.50 per hour job. And I just got in a freaking UFC fight with this kid. And I just felt so down right? And I couldn't, at that point, you can't see that future. There was no like light at the end of the tunnel. It didn't even look like there was a tunnel. It just looked like everything was black around me. And that's really story number one, okay? This is not the happy end to this story, but that's story number one. And then let me tell you the lessons I learned from story number one. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of the other stories, like it works out in the end. So the arc is much better than story number one would let on. So this is me looking back at this story 10 years later and what I learned from it. And the first thing I learned is that feeling like a loser is okay. You got to keep in mind that everybody who was good at something was a loser at that something before, okay? So this is just a natural progression of what you have to go through. And if you don't like your firm, you want to make a change, you want to go into a different area, whatever that is, just realize that you are going to get into that new thing and you are, for a period of time, going to feel like a loser. And that is really difficult because we really don't like that as human beings, right? Like, we try very hard not to look like losers and not to feel like losers inside. But it's okay. It's okay to feel like a loser. Then the second thing I learned is that fear is a tremendous motivator. I was scared, at this point, I was scared every single day. I was scared about money. I was scared that I was not going to be able to do what I needed to for my family. I didn't really feel like a good provider, a good man at this point, or a husband. That fear was just inside me at this point. And it was a motivator. Like, I wanted to not feel that anymore because it was so heavy on my shoulders. So second is that fear is a great motivator. And then three, get out as soon as you can from this stage. Because feeling like a loser is okay, fear is a great motivator. You stay in this stage though, where those things are the overriding emotions that you feel, and they will bury you after a while. You can sustain this for a little bit and use it, but you cannot stay there, right? And we all know people, I think, in our lives that have stayed at this spot and have never really gotten much better. They're horrible people to deal with after a while, okay? So just use this, but get out of it as soon as you possibly can. Okay, so those are the three from story one. And we got story two. The title of story two is The Best Lie That I Ever Told My Wife. Okay. I try not to lie to my wife very often. My wife can't lie to me. She's terrible at lying. But I'm an attorney, so I'm fairly adept at it, right, when I go for it. But I try very hard not to do that. So we're a little bit removed from the UFC bout with Muhammad here. We're in about month 7 of the law firm. And at month 7, I had made $3,000, give or take, from the law firm. You know, every once in a while I get a guardianship for $300. I'd have a hearing on a criminal matter for a few $100s. Like, I was just doing anything and everything and just taking pittance for it because I didn't know what I was doing. I had literally no idea. When I said I'm not that bright a guy and this just worked out, like, that is the absolute truth. Like, I had no plan. I was like Joker in The Dark Knight. Like, do I look like the guy with a plan, right? I was that. And I was just trying to figure out, but I was terrible at the business side of things. I didn't know how to sell to people. I didn't know how to get paid, collect on anything. I didn't know how to get retainers. I didn't know any of this stuff. So we're 7 months in and $3,000. So things have not gone well, obviously. And I have not told my wife material facts about our money for a while. I've not shared those with my wife. And we all know that that's lying. So I was lying to my wife about money because I didn't really want her to feel the kind of stress that I was feeling over this. She was in her first year at her doctorate and she was doing that. And she was taking care of our son and, you know, we're doing all these things. But I just didn't want her to feel that stress. So I didn't tell her about it. She gets to the end of her first year in the doctorate program, decides that she wants to go to Italy to sing. So she sings opera. This is the place you go. She gets accepted to a place over there and goes, We incurred yet more debt to make this happen. I think we had $160,000 from law school and my wife's master's. So I figured, why not? Like, I had not figured out the money game at this point. So we incur some debt. She goes over there. So I'm now alone because our son went with with her mom down to Texas. So we send Elliot to her mom down in Texas. She goes to Italy, and I'm now alone. And alone is not a good place to be with your thoughts in this stage, because I'm scared. I'm still scared every day. We have no money. I'm now fairly certain that things are just going to come off the rails. And it was at this point when I started applying for law firm jobs. You remember how I felt about the law firm before. This was something I told myself I would never do. In fact, Blake and I were talking about this. Just the beauty of owning your own law firm is amazing. And I had kind of caught a little glimpse of that. I really liked what I was doing, I just hadn't made it work yet, right? So I told myself that I would never go back to working for a law firm. And a big part of that is I'm just a terrible employee, right? I knew it would never work. It was just some stopgap measure. But I was at a place where I couldn't do anything else. So I started applying. But this is 2010, 2011. Again, nobody is hiring. I had a few interviews. I mean, federal clerks were coming back to Salt Lake and taking like prosecutor jobs in Salt Lake County. It was insane. They weren't even going to the U.S. Attorney's office. They were going to Salt Lake County, right? It clerked in like the 9th Circuit, 10th Circuit. So it's that type of situation, and I just was getting absolutely nothing. So I didn't know what to do. I literally didn't have any idea what to do, and I'm alone and I'm scared. But it just kept going. And I remember it was as if the hand of God came down, and everybody paid. Everyone paid. I made $17,000 in a week. And that was more money than I'd ever seen in my entire life to that point. And I forgot to talk about this. So not only am I alone, I had been office sharing with some really nice guys in South Jordan, but they were charging me, money for that. And I just didn't have any money to pay them. So I had to leave. So I'm literally sitting in our apartment, in our room, trying to run a law office from my laptop, the same laptop I used during law school. So it is beat to just smithereens. I'm trying to do that, right? And everybody pays. So the first thing I do is take about $6,000 that I owed the guys in South Jordan. I paid that off. And we're left with this money. I thought, what are we gonna do? And is this just a one-time thing? And then, as a couple more weeks went on, it wasn't. Like, people kept paying. And I realized that something had changed in me. I had figured some things out. And I could collect now, and I could do more of this, right? So I felt fairly secure that money was going to stay and that it was going to continue to come in. So at that point, I thought, okay, cool. I'm going to spend a little bit of this. So what I did is I bought a ticket to Italy. And I don't tell my wife. I'm going to surprise my wife. I am on the line to get on the flight to Paris and then go to Venice. I call my wife on my cell. I say, hey, I got a trial for the next 2 days, so I won't be able to talk. I'm just going to be incommunicado. She said, okay, I appreciate you telling me that. I turn off the phone. I get on the plane. 14 hours later, I am in Venice. Get off the plane there, go get the rental car, drive to where my wife is. My wife is in this little town called Nova Feltria. It's over near the Adriatic coast on the east side of Italy, but it's kind of in the mountains, so it's a little bit removed from the Adriatic. So I drive for a while, and I remember as I'm driving, I'm shaving in the car with my electric razor. Italians do not use electric razors, so this lady comes up to pass me, and I look over at her, and she is guffawing in the car. She's never seen an electric razor. She thinks it's the funniest thing on the earth. Anyway, the Nova Feltria is in kind of the hills, so I have to drive up the mountains to get to it. It's about 3.5 hours later. I park the car, don't have any idea where she is at all. But I serve my mission over there. I go back to try to go back there relatively often. So I go talk to people. I say, where's the theater? And in their very Italian way, they say it's 100 meters that way, which is the universal way of giving directions in Italy. And 100 meters may mean 100 meters, or it may mean 3 kilometers, like literally as anything. So I just walk, and I'd ask the next person, and then the next person. I finally get to the theater. I walk in, see my wife. She's practicing, so I kind of hang out. I'm standing in the corner. She's talking with somebody after the practice, and then she locks eyes on me. She sees me, and there's that kind of really quizzical look on her face, and that kind of giddy thing you do when you see people you love and you haven't seen them for a while. So there's that sound, and we kind of make our way toward each other. And there's this rush of emotion at that point. She said, why are you here? What are you doing? And I tell her everything that had been happening, all the money problems, and I started interviewing, and I just kind of gush all of this stuff out. And then I get to the end, I'm like, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be fine. And so both of us at that point just start, gushing emotions. And I remember people were watching us at this point, and the stage director kind of figured out what was happening, and he was like crying, like visibly, like tears rolling down. So there was just this huge, catharsis of emotion. And then we spent, the next 2 weeks there. We drove around. She performed. It was a really, really beautiful time. And that was the moment I realized that we'd have problems going forward. I'm going to talk about those in the next story, but we're going to be okay. All right. So that's the end of story 2. And by the way, for all the men in the room, you ever want to make an impression on your wife, do something like that. Like, she still talks about that to this day. It's a great story. Okay. So the lessons learned from this: 1, you'll be okay. You'll go out, you'll do your own thing. You might start at a new firm, whatever it is. You need to bring in clients, whatever it is that you're having a problem with, work on it, and you will be okay eventually. Okay. The second thing I learned was to reward myself. So I got to the point where I knew it was gonna be all right. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna celebrate this. I'm gonna reward myself with something. And that was going over and seeing my wife. And if I hadn't done that, I would have missed a real opportunity to feel good about the accomplishment, right? So take some time and reward yourself. If I didn't have this story, my life would be fundamentally different, I think. And then the third thing is to savor these moments. So as you're going along this path, as you start a law firm or grow a business, whatever it is that you're doing, you're writing your own story, okay? You're writing your narrative of your life. And you have to savor the moments in that narrative that are really super important, okay? And I love this, for example, I love this scene because I can look back at this when crap happens, when things are going badly, and think, no, it's gonna be all right. Remember this, and I tell myself this story, and I know that it's gonna be okay, right? But if I rewarded myself and I didn't go back to that and tell that story, you're not going to continue to progress nearly as well. So savor the moments. Okay. Story number 3 is called The Great Shower Incident of 2015. So that's 2011 is story number 2. Now we go to story number 3. And it's 2015. Some good things have happened and some bad things have happened in the intervening 4 years here. So I have stressed myself out of my mind, just busting my hump, through this entire ordeal, right? Just working and working and working. It's still, in 2015, it's like me, and I have part-time or full-time staff, Jody, my paralegal, and then I had a part-time contract attorney. So it was really just me, banging everything out, okay? I was still doing every mediation, going to every court hearing, going to every trial, meeting with every client, and that had taken a toll on me at that point. So I let myself get large. I have always fluctuated weight. When I was a kid, I was morbidly obese, and I lost a whole bunch of weight, but I've always had to watch that, and I let myself get big again, which for me is not good. It's an indicator of a lot of things are wrong. So there was that. Spiritually, I wasn't doing terribly well. Emotionally, it was tough. My family, like I was snippy and I was gone a lot, so that wasn't great. I'm just super grateful for my wife who has stuck by me through this entire thing. She's been fantastic. But that's kind of my personal state at that point. The professional had gone pretty well though. I treat my colleagues with respect. I try to serve my clients well. And in 2015, I was named Family Law Lawyer of the Year, and I don't really care about awards. Like, I use them for marketing, and that's about it. But this one I cared about because this was voted on by the family law section of the bar, and I won. I'm like, holy crap, that's fantastic. So I was really happy about that, and I felt pretty euphoric for about 2 days, and then it washed off, and then I was left with all of the problems that existed before I won. I remember getting up the day that it kind of this is the wash off, right? I get up, I'm in the shower. I dearly love showers. They're just great times you can just be alone, and it's just fantastic. So I enjoyed it for about 5 minutes, and then I started thinking about cases. And then you get that thing where your heart starts to palpitate when you think about your case and all the stuff you got to do and how much they suck. And then I got that constriction of my chest that happens as well, and that headache, that stress headache that you get, like that was coming on in the shower. And I was getting emotional when I talk about this one. So at this point, I'd had this happen before, but this one was different because I was essentially shown my future. And that future was that if I stayed on this path I was on, I was going to die when I was about 60, 65. And I was going to leave my family. I was going to be dead. And I thought, well, no, I don't really want to do that. So I got out of the shower and thought, okay, I need to change essentially everything here because I can't go down this path. But again, I didn't know what to do. So I sat around for a few days and I thought, okay, what can I prioritize and get done? The first thing I did was to take back my health. So I started exercising. Like the next morning after this happened, I woke up at 5, which I don't really do. But I woke up at 5, I went and I exercised, I started eating better, I automatically lost about 15 pounds. And then, so that was the first thing, and that didn't happen all at once, but that was kind of the first thing I thought about. And then I did what was necessary to kind of right myself, spiritually and with my family. And then in the business, I remember thinking, okay, what's the easiest thing I can do that will make a whole bunch of different changes? And if anybody's heard me talk, I talk about getting paid a lot because of this experience. So I decided that I was going to get paid 100% for the work I did. So I was getting paid maybe like 50%, 60%, for the work that was coming in that I was billing. But I decided at that point, I'm like, nope, we're going to do 100. And then I thought, okay, how do I make that happen? Because I didn't have any clue how to make that happen. So I sat around and thought about the systems and everything else that had to be necessary and implemented to make that happen, and then started executing on that. And that was the point when everything starts to change. I am just super, super grateful for that experience and that shower, because that literally was like the change in my life. And that is the great shower incident of 2015. So let's talk about what I learned from that one. One is that work will ruin you and consume you if you let it. Work is going to expand as much as you allow it to expand. So it will infiltrate every moment of your life. And if you let it do that, it will absolutely ruin you. Okay, it will ruin you. It will ruin your family. We all know these people that allow it to do this, and the consequences are not good. Okay, so that will happen, and you just have to make a decision that is not going to happen in your life. Second thing I learned was that it was to be good to your colleagues, because everybody is going to go through really, really rough times. As a lawyer, it's kind of a trope, but we have stressful jobs and we fight with people all the time, and this is kind of our life, and we chose this. So we're going to have bad times. If you have bad times emotionally, with your family, spiritually, physically, and your colleagues hate you because you're a jerk to your colleagues, like that's 10x worse. Like that just builds huge amounts of stress, just piles it on. So don't do that. Be good to your colleagues. Be proactively good to your colleagues, right? Like really try to make their lives better somehow so that when you go through this stuff, they will understand and they will treat you well and with respect. And then the third thing, money matters. Money matters a lot. Anybody who tells you that doesn't have any money, okay? That it does matter, like they don't have any money. They don't know what they're talking about. Money matters because it solves problems and it provides freedom. So what I had to do in that moment was I identified a lot of the issues I had with my law firm, and I thought, I don't have enough time in the day to solve these issues. So I have to have somebody else solve them. And if I can write a check and have somebody solve these issues, then I don't have these issues anymore, right? Like I can write a check and solve the problems, I don't have a problem. So you need money. And that was it. I was like, okay, how do we get more money? And I'm like, okay, I'm leaving like 50, 60 cents on the table. And maybe it's not 50, 60 cents, 40, 50 cents for you. Maybe it's 10% for you, right? 10 cents on the table. But over a year, you bill $400,000, $500,000. Like $40,000, $50,000 solves a lot of problems if you use it to solve problems. Okay, so money matters a lot, and use your money to solve problems. That's where you should be in this, kind of in this stage. And that's what I learned in that moment. All right, then we have the last story, number 4, which is destination disease. So we're going to fast forward about 5 years in the end of 2019, right? When did COVID start? Was it 19 or was it 19? Okay, yep. So it's March of 2019, and things are going pretty well. I'm able to leave the law firm. I have really, really good people working and running our systems. People I trust. Money's pretty good at this point. We've helped a lot of clients, so things are feeling good. My family and I go over to Italy, as we do. We went to Sicily this time in March of 2019. And there's this thing called COVID, but no one really knows if it's going to, what's going to happen, right? So we are there. It seeds in Lombardy in the north, and we are in Sicily in the south. So it's like Seattle to San Diego. But 10% of Italians are dying of COVID at this point. So everyone is rightfully absolutely freaked out of their minds. Now, we learned later that that's because COVID got into the old folks' homes, and Italians that are of that age, I think the average death age was 81, somewhere around there. But that generation of Italians all smoked like chimneys. So they all had emphysema, they all had lung cancer, they all had some type of cancer. Like, it was very bad. So it's not a representative sample, but we didn't know that, right? So we're all freaked out. They're going to close the borders in 2 days. We scramble and get out. We're on a flight back to New York. Come to find out, over like halfway to New York, the stewardess, I'm sorry, I always say stewardess, but it's flight attendant. My wife always corrects me on that. So the flight attendant tells us, this is the last flight out of Italy. And it was for like a year. I don't think there was another flight that came in the United States from Italy for like a year. So when we get back home, we're all sorts of freaked out. We hunker down because we have to quarantine. And right after the quarantine stops, that's when the 2 weeks to slow the spread happens. So we're in the house for like a full-on month. So by the time we get out, it's a couple months later. And we had, at that point, we didn't get paid. Like, it didn't pay us anything during that period of time. We literally lived on the cash we had in the house, right? But when the doors open up on COVID and people start kind of coming out again, they realize that they really don't like each other anymore. And divorce goes through the roof. And that's all we do. So our numbers went up tremendously. And the money just starts flowing in. And have a good team, the money's really there. This feels, we're all kind of hunkered down anyway. So this feels really super good. It feels like, to me, it feels like I've kind of arrived, right? And I bask in that for a little bit and just kind of take it in. And it's a super cool feeling. I've never felt anything like this in my life. I love it. And that was cool for, a little bit. And then I realized that if I stayed in that place, because I could have just stayed in that place and done what I was doing, and that would have been perfectly comfortable. And it would have been, ostensibly, it would have been great. But I realized within myself that if I'd stayed in that place, I would have become completely and totally sclerotic as a human being. And I wouldn't advance. And now, more than that, though, we would stay sclerotic as a law firm, and we wouldn't get better as a law firm. And I feel a real need to help my people get better at what they do, right? And to help them create wealth and help more and more people and so on. So I realized that, that just wasn't gonna work. As good as that felt for a little while, that wasn't gonna happen. So from that time on, that's the destination disease, right? Like you get there and you think you made it, and then you just peter out. And we all know people that have done this, that they get to a certain point and they're cool. And maybe they're good with it. I'm not good with it. Like I just realized in myself that was not gonna happen. And it was not satisfying. And that and at this point, really, I realized that the potential that we had as a law firm and my own personal potential was so much greater than I had ever anticipated. Because when I was in law school, I kind of thought about what I might accomplish as an attorney. And then by the time this came around, I had accomplished, multiples more than that. Stuff I never thought I would do. And then you get thinking about that, you're like, oh, well, if I can do this, why can't I do other things, right? Why can't I grow? And that really has been, so that's kind of that next step. And I don't have a story 5 at this point. This is story 4, but this is where story 4 kind of ends. But let me tell you about the things I've learned so far from story 4. And that is that comfort's nice, but only for a moment. Again, maybe you're the kind of person that just wants to be comfortable and that is it for them. And that's totally fine. I don't think that's most people, though. I don't think that's satisfying to most people if they're really honest with themselves. So figure out within yourself what's important to you. Is that kind of self-actualization, getting to that next step, is that really what you want? And if it is, then you have to make a decision to get there. And I will tell you, though, that your potential is so much greater than you realize. Like my potential is so much greater than I had realized, 5 years ago. And everybody here has that within them. It's just whether or not we choose to go after it and discover that. And then the third thing is that you will need to remake yourself in order to improve from this stage. Because once you get to this stage, like this is kind of when you think you made it, right? And when you think you made it, you don't think you really need to do much of anything else. But if you're gonna get better than that, like this has to be a complete retooling of who you are as a human being. And when you do that, we go back to story 1 and you feel like a loser, okay? You're gonna do these things and you're gonna go back to that loser stage. Now, this loser stage is different than the first loser stage, because initially, when I felt like a loser in the beginning, it was because I jumped out of a plane without a parachute, okay? Now I have a parachute, a few other things, so it's not quite the same, but I still feel like, as I'm trying to do these things, it's super uncomfortable, and I still feel like a loser, and I get a little bit of that, that I had back in 2010. But everybody's going to have that when they kind of remake themselves. So it's this cycle. So it goes back to 1, and you just have to remember. That's why you remember you're going to be okay from story 2, right? And then you're going to get to another point, and you're going to have to make some additional changes, and then you're going to get back to the story 4, which is I've arrived again, right? And this is the cycle. Like it's going to go like this, And if you want it to, it keeps going up. And that's, that was the last thing that I've realized. And here's the other thing, it's not easy. Like, getting above this is really not simple. But if you have a commitment to your firm and you want to make them better and you want to lead other people within your firm and create wealth for them, create wealth for their families, create a larger and larger firm and a better firm, then get on it. There is no other way to do it. Okay, so that's the end. I have some bonus material if we want to go over that, answer any questions if you have those. I thought I'd end just a little bit early. So.
I felt really guilty eating this chocolate ice cream while you were talking about losing weight. I was like, it's not conducive to what market's on there now.
It's okay.
What's the bonus material?
The bonus material? So the bonus material is what it takes to get past each story. So what I've talked to you about is the lessons that I learned in each of these stories now as I look back at them. But what it takes to get from like story 1 to story 2 and story 3 to 4. So from story 1 to story 2 was you just have to accept the fear and push through it. Jamie Foxx says, what's on the other side of fear? Nothing. Like literally doesn't exist, right? It's just kind of what we feel, so just get through it. But you have to push through that fear and you have to lean into it. So that was story 1, the UFC fight to story 2. And then from story 2 to story 3, one second. You have to work like a dog. I mean, you got to work like a dog in story 1, but really getting over the fear is the first thing and realizing that you'll be okay. And then at that point, you just have to work like a dog because there is absolutely no other way to succeed other than working like a dog. Tim Ferriss writes the book 4-Hour Work Week and blah, 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 blah. It's all crap. Like that dude works. If you ever know anything about Tim Ferriss, he writes this book, but that dude works like 80 hours a week and always has. So he's just full of garbage. It was a way for him to make money. And that's cool, but there is no substitution for like just grinding it out. Okay, so you have to work. And from story 3, which is the Great Shower Incident of 2015, to story 4, I talked about this a little bit. You have to use money to fix problems. Okay, so identify where your problems are. If you don't have the time to fix it or you don't want to fix it, then use the money that you have to hire somebody or to create a system that fixes that problem. Okay, now the reason you do this, and you don't want to spend this money because it's your money, right? Like you don't want to do that. But if you don't spend this money to fix the problem, you're never going to make more money. Okay, you're never going to create wealth in your family or for yourself. You're not going to create wealth for other attorneys or your staff or anybody else. So fix that, figure that out. You will make multiples more money if you spend money to fix the problems that you see.
Marco?
Yep.
Just making a comment on that.
Yep.
I think part of the analysis is also going back periodically and figuring out what spends aren't fixing your problems.
Exactly.
And getting rid of those and reallocating that money to things that are working to fix your problems.
Yeah, and you need to, we all need to ask ourselves, because that's a little, I get that, but we need to ask ourselves in the context of people that we have on the bus, right? Like, do you actually have the right people on the bus to fix the problems? And if you don't have the right people on the bus and you're paying them money, then you're just throwing money at problems that aren't being solved. So you need to figure out if you need to get people off the bus and get the right people on the bus, and then spend that money on the right people. Yeah, and that's really tough. Like that's a rough one, right? I don't like firing people. I never have. I kind of wish it were easier for me to do that, but at the same time, I don't. But we all have to make that analysis. So. And then, so thanks for that comment. I appreciate it. And then from 4, so I don't have 5, right? I don't have story 5, but I'm kind of extrapolating from the trajectory here. To go to from story 4 to story 5, you have to sacrifice for progress. Okay, this is the retooling of yourself after you think you've made it. And that, again, is a very uncomfortable process. Usually we as humans retool ourselves when circumstances throw us into a place where we have to retool ourselves. We're like absolutely forced to do this sort of thing, right? But choosing to put yourself in that situation where you have to remake yourself is an entirely different beast. And most humans never choose that, right? So you have to make that conscious decision and then go with it. And again, it's like, you feel like a loser, and that's okay.